Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is the new liquid glass from Apple and what that means in the context of some of the hardware changes, putting those two together, and how that impacts expectations for iPhone growth for the next, let's say, 6 quarters. And so, taking a step back, yesterday, Apple did roll out the official iOS 26. That kind of lining up with the years. And this, of course, is liquid glass. We saw this back in WWDC in June, so no surprises there. But my own experience getting my hands on it, I would suggest that there is a learning curve here. I've talked with Brian, who's I work closely with. He's spent a lot of time looking at it. He does not want to update it. Just feels a little bit just out of the ordinary. My experience with it is that it is, in fact, out of the ordinary. There is a learning curve around it, and actually a little bit of, I would say, anxiety that I have using it because some of the overlays in terms of messaging with emails, phone messages, text messages, I'm not certain. And you layer some of the Apple Intelligence on top of that. And some of the prioritizing that I turned on, I'm not sure I'm seeing what I need to see. And so that's just a learning curve. And that's important to note that there is a learning curve going on because I think, in fact, as I get more comfortable with this, I will prefer it versus the previous OS because it just seems ultimately more clean. And I think it's worth noting that this change doesn't happen very often. And that's why I have some of these feelings is that it doesn't happen very often. And if you're curious, it's been a long time since we've seen a major update. It's been 12 years, almost to the date, since iOS 7 came out. And that's when they shifted famously away from that pool table felt green game center look, that sewed leather look around some apps, to a more Android-like look and feel. This was Johnny Ive who had initiated that. But Apple is very deliberate. They're very cautious, slow in terms of making changes to the OS because we spend so much time with it. And so they do want to be careful about how frequently they do that. So call it once a decade kind of a change. It is worth noting that since the software gets bigger and bigger each time, each download gets bigger of the OS, is that if you have older phones, it's going to run more sluggish, and which gets back to the upgrade pool and what it means for iPhone estimates. So regardless of which phone you're on, you're going to be getting this update. You've had this update to the new operating system, and Apple's shown data in the past around this, and they get some pretty phenomenal upgrade rates. On the order of like 70% upgrade over the first few months. And so you're going to be getting this new OS, and ultimately you're probably, if you have an older phone, and I'm going to probably put this probably an iPhone, let's say that's 4 years old or older, it's going to feel pretty sluggish. And I think that does become a catalyst to this upgrade pool going forward. So, and as far as when we think about new options of the phone, if it's been a few years since you've upgraded and you look at what's on the table, of course, the new Air, totally different. And what I think is a pretty material change to the Pro line, more of an industrial look, Apple Watch Ultra kind of look to it that does stand out. And so putting those two together, it's been basically 11 years since we had a major hardware upgrade. That was iPhone 6 Plus came out. I mentioned 12 years since a major OS came. And when you put those together, there's a lot of change going on with the iPhone this week. And I think that ultimately it is going to yield some what will be impressive growth that the street's not expecting. We're going to probably start to see that in the December quarter. The street's currently looking for 7% iPhone growth. I think it's going to be 10% or better. And for next year, the street's looking for 5% growth. I've talked about a 7% number. I think it's going to be even a little bit higher than that. And so in the context of everything that's going on with AI and some of these massive growth rates, talking about 10 and 7% growth doesn't sound too exciting. But in the context of Apple that has struggled to grow outside of its services business, that kind of growth in iPhone is something that will, I think, lead to not only higher earnings numbers, but a higher multiple. And so I'm still in the position I think Apple's going to be one of the best performing Mag 7s for the back half of this year in anticipation of these iPhone numbers going higher. So that's the pressure point. Big week this week for Apple. I do want to put a postscript on this episode and talk about AI. And of course, it wasn't present at the launch event last week. They didn't talk about Apple Intelligence. They didn't talk about the timing of the new Siri, and that led for a little bit of pressure on shares after the event. But I think it's worth noting that the pressure that myself and the investment community has put on this new Siri, which presumably is going to be out next March, I think is a little bit misplaced. And specifically is that what we're seeing with the hardware updates, the software updates, and the competitively what's going on with other AI consumer devices, which basically is nothing's going on. I think that Apple has a lot more time than people realize to figure AI out. And specifically is that if they miss the mark in March, shares will be down. People will say it's over. And then they will turn and look around and say, there is no other company that has a family of devices that work so well together, whether it's AirPods, your watch, Apple TV, your phone, your Mac, all of this all together. No one comes even close. And I think that reality gives Apple a lot of time to figure this out. I think that they probably have in the order of a couple of years, really in the order of until some crazy great AI consumer device comes out that captures attention. And maybe that comes from Johnny Ive. We're going to see a preview of that next year. But for the most part, I think they've got more time than what we realize. So understand that the conversation around Apple and iPhone naturally gravitates to their missteps so far in AI, but in the context of what they have built, how tied in people are, they got a lot of time to figure this out. They're going to get it right eventually. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.